My wife left me after her best friend lied about me cheating. When she discovered the truth, she begged me to come back, but it was too late. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. I never thought my marriage of 8 years would end because of a single text message. But when Sarah showed me her phone that Tuesday morning, her hands shaking and tears streaming down her face, I knew my world was about to collapse. The message was from Jessica, her best friend since college, and it contained a photo that would destroy everything I'd built with the woman I loved. "How could you do this to me, David?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, but the pain in it cut through me like a knife. "Jessica saw you at the Marriott downtown yesterday with some blonde woman. She took this picture to protect me." I stared at the image on her phone, my mind racing to process what I was seeing. It showed a man who looked exactly like me from behind, entering a hotel room with a woman I'd never seen before. The timestamp showed yesterday at 2:47 p.m., exactly when I was supposed to be in my quarterly meeting at the office. "Sarah, baby, this isn't me," I said, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away like I'd burned her. "I was in the conference room all afternoon yesterday. You can call my boss, check the meeting minutes, anything. This is some kind of mistake." But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. She was scrolling through more messages from Jessica, each one more damning than the last. Screenshots of supposed hotel receipts with my name on them. Photos of a man in my favorite blue shirt walking hand in hand with the same blonde woman. Text messages that Jessica claimed showed conversations between me and my mistress. "Jessica has been watching out for me," Sarah said, her voice getting stronger with each word. "She's been documenting this for weeks, David. Weeks! While I was here cooking your favorite meals and planning our anniversary trip, you were out there. With her, I felt like I was drowning." Every word Sarah spoke pulled me deeper underwater. "Sarah, please, just give me a chance to prove this isn't real. Let me show you my phone records, my credit card statements, anything. I have never cheated on you. I would never cheat on you." Sarah's laugh was hollow and broken. "Your phone records? Your credit card statements?" Jessica already explained how easy it is to have secret accounts, burner phones. She showed me articles about how cheaters hide their tracks. "You've been living a double life, David, and I was too blind to see it." The worst part wasn't even Sarah's accusations. It was the look in her eyes, like she was seeing a stranger instead of the man who'd held her through her father's funeral, who'd surprised her with breakfast in bed every Sunday for 8 years, who'd cried when she'd had her miscarriage, and promised we'd try again when she was ready. "I'm staying at Jessica's tonight," Sarah announced, already heading toward our bedroom to pack. "I need space to think about what comes next." I followed her, watching helplessly as she threw clothes into a suitcase. "Sarah, please don't go. Stay here. Let's work through this together. Call in sick tomorrow. We'll spend the whole day going through everything, proving that this is all some horrible misunderstanding." She stopped packing and turned to face me, and for a moment, I thought I saw doubt flicker across her face. But then her phone buzzed with another message from Jessica, and whatever hesitation she'd had vanished. "Jessica says you'd try to manipulate me into staying. She warned me you'd have explanations for everything, that cheaters always do." Sarah zipped up her suitcase with a finality that echoed through our bedroom. "She's been such a good friend through all of this. At least I know someone has my back." That night, I sat alone in our house, surrounded by 8 years of memories and trying to make sense of what had just happened. I called Sarah's phone 17 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. I texted her photos of my office keycard logs, showing I'd been at work until 6 p.m. yesterday. I sent screenshots of my bank statements, my phone records, anything I could think of to prove my innocence. But with each message I sent, I could almost hear Jessica's voice in Sarah's ear, explaining away every piece of evidence, convincing her that I was just a skilled liar who'd finally been caught. The next morning, I woke up on our couch to find a text from Sarah. "I've talked to a lawyer. I want a divorce, David. Jessica is helping me through the process. Don't contact me anymore." 3 weeks had passed since Sarah moved out, and I was living like a ghost in my own home. The divorce papers arrived on a Friday, delivered by a courier who looked at me with the same disgust I'd been seeing in everyone's eyes lately. Word had spread through our social circle faster than wildfire, and apparently, Jessica had made sure everyone knew I was the cheating husband who'd broken sweet Sarah's heart. I was scrolling through Facebook, torturing myself by looking at Sarah's posts, when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In her latest photo, a picture of her and Jessica at some wine bar. Jessica was wearing a necklace I recognized. It was a delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant that I'd bought for Sarah's birthday 2 years ago. The same necklace Sarah claimed she'd lost about 6 months ago. My hands were shaking as I called my friend Marcus, the only person who still believed in my innocence. "Marcus, I need your help with something. Can you meet me at that coffee shop on 5th Street in an hour?" Marcus arrived looking concerned, his lawyer instincts already kicking in. "David, you look terrible. Have you been eating? Sleeping?" "Marcus, I think Jessica is wearing Sarah's necklace in this photo," I said, showing him my phone. "The one I bought her for her birthday. The one she said she lost." Marcus squinted at the screen, then looked up at me with raised eyebrows. "Okay, that's weird. But maybe Sarah gave it to her? Or maybe it's just a similar necklace." "No, Marcus. Look at the clasp. See that little dent? That happened when Sarah caught it on our car door last Christmas. I remember because she was so worried I'd be upset about her damaging the gift I'd given her." I zoomed in on the photo, pointing to the tiny imperfection that proved this was the same necklace. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing what I was telling him. David, if Jessica has been stealing from Sarah, or if there's something else going on here, we need to be very careful about how we approach this. Sarah is already convinced you're the bad guy. If you go to her with accusations about her best friend without solid proof, it'll just look like you're trying to deflect blame. But I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was racing, connecting dots I'd never thought to connect before. Marcus, remember how Jessica was always around when Sarah and I had our biggest fights? She'd show up with wine and chocolate, ready to comfort Sarah and tell her she deserved better. That's what friends do, David. No, listen. She was there after Sarah's promotion got passed over, telling her that successful women intimidate men like me. She was there when Sarah was upset about us not having kids yet, suggesting that maybe I wasn't as committed to our future as I claimed. She was always there, always ready with explanations for why I wasn't good enough for Sarah. Marcus set down his coffee cup with a clink that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet cafe. You think Jessica has been sabotaging your marriage from the inside? I think Jessica has been playing the long game, I said, my voice getting stronger as the pieces fell into place. And that photo of me at the hotel? I need to find out exactly how she got it, because there's no way it's real. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. His name was Tony Rodriguez, and Marcus had used him for some of his divorce cases. Tony was a thick-set man in his 50s with tired eyes and calloused hands, but when I showed him the evidence I'd collected, his expression sharpened with interest. Mr. Thompson, I've seen cases like this before, Tony said, leaning across his desk. Sometimes the person closest to the victim is the one pulling the strings. But before we go down this road, you need to understand, once we start digging, we might find things you don't want to know about your wife, your marriage, or yourself. I need to know the truth, Tony. Whatever it is. Tony nodded slowly. All right, I'll start with Jessica Morrison. Full background check, financial records, social media analysis, the works. And I'll look into those hotel photos too. If they're fake, I'll find proof. If they're real. He paused, meeting my eyes. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. 3 days later, Tony called me with news that made my stomach drop. David, you need to sit down for this. Jessica Morrison isn't who she says she is. Her real name is Jessica Chen, and she's got a history of inserting herself into other people's relationships. I found records of at least 2 other marriages she helped destroy in the past 5 years. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a pattern, David. She befriends married women, gains their trust, then systematically destroys their relationships while positioning herself as the supportive friend. In one case, she ended up dating the woman's ex-husband 6 months after their divorce was finalized. My legs gave out, and I sank into my kitchen chair. The hotel photos? Photoshopped. Very well done, but fake. She used photos of you from Sarah's social media and digitally inserted you into scenarios with a paid model. I've got the metadata that proves it, and I'm tracking down the woman in the photos. She's an actress from Los Angeles who does stock photo shoots. I felt like I was going to be sick. Tony, there's something else. Sarah has been dating someone new. Some guy named Brad that Jessica introduced her to. They've been together for 2 months already. The silence on Tony's end of the phone was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was grim. David, I think you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this goes deeper than we thought. I'm going to keep digging, but in the meantime, don't contact Sarah. Don't tip our hand until we have everything we need to expose what Jessica has done. 2 weeks after Tony's shocking revelation, I was sitting in a rented car across the street from Jessica's apartment building, feeling like a stalker but knowing I needed answers. Tony had given me her real address, not the fancy downtown loft she'd claimed to live in, but a modest 2-bedroom in a middle-class neighborhood about 20 minutes from where Sarah and I used to live. At 7:30 a.m. sharp, Jessica emerged from the building, but she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, carrying 2 coffee cups and laughing at something she'd said. My heart stopped when I recognized him. It was Brad, the same Brad that Sarah had been posting photos with on social media, the man Jessica had supposedly just met and thought would be perfect for my devastated wife. I grabbed my phone and started recording as they kissed goodbye on the sidewalk. The kiss wasn't the awkward peck of new acquaintances. It was intimate, comfortable, the kiss of 2 people who'd been together for much longer than the 2 months Sarah thought she'd known him. Got you, I whispered, my hands shaking as I watched Brad get into a BMW that was definitely not a struggling artist's car, which was how Jessica had described him to Sarah. Tony called me later that day with more devastating news. David, I found the actress from the hotel photos. Her name is Monica Stevens, and she's willing to testify about the photo shoot Jessica hired her for. But that's not the worst part. What do you mean? Jessica and Brad have been married for 3 years. They run this scam together. She destroys the marriage, he swoops in as the rebound guy, and they work together to drain the victim's finances. In the Henderson case I told you about, they got away with nearly $200,000 before disappearing. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Sarah's inheritance from her grandmother. She got $300,000 when her grandma died last year. We put it in a separate account because she wanted to use it for something special someday. David, you need to check that account now. I was already pulling up our bank's website on my phone, my fingers fumbling over the password. When the account balance loaded, I stared at the screen in disbelief. Tony, there's only $18,000 left. There should be $300,000 plus interest. When was the last time Sarah checked that account. She gave me access to manage all our finances. She never liked dealing with bank stuff, said it stressed her out. The pieces were falling into place like dominoes. Tony, Jessica convinced her to leave me, convinced her to trust Brad, and now they're stealing her inheritance while she thinks she's building a new life. There's more, David. I found Jessica's real social media accounts, not the sanitized ones she shows your wife. She's been documenting this whole thing like it's a game. Photos of your house, screenshots of Sarah's text messages, even pictures of your wedding rings with captions about how easy it was to break up the happy couple. That evening, I made a decision that would either save my marriage or destroy any remaining chance I had with Sarah forever. I drove to Jessica's apartment and waited in the parking garage until I saw her car pull in. When she got out, carrying grocery bags and humming to herself, I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Hello, Jessica. Or should I say Jessica Chen? The grocery bag slipped from her hands, sending apples rolling across the concrete floor. For just a moment, her carefully constructed mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes before she recovered her composure. David, what are you doing here? If Sarah finds out you're stalking me, Sarah won't find out because you're not going to tell her. Just like you're not going to tell her about your husband Brad, or the $280,000 you've stolen from her inheritance account, or the fact that those hotel photos were fake. Jessica's face went white, but she tried to maintain her innocent act. I don't know what you're talking about. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown, and I think I should call the police. Go ahead, I said, pulling out my phone. I've got Monica Stevens on speed dial. She's very eager to talk to someone about the photo shoot you paid her for. Turns out she kept copies of all the fake images you had her pose for. Jessica's composure cracked completely. The sweet, caring woman who'd comforted my wife through our marriage troubles was gone, replaced by someone whose smile looked more like a shark's grin. You have no idea what you're dealing with, David. Sarah loves me now more than she ever loved you. She trusts me completely. Even if you somehow convinced her about the photos, she'd never believe her precious Brad was involved. Maybe not, I said, stepping closer. But she might believe it when she sees the marriage certificate I found, or the photos of you and Brad together from your real social media accounts, or the bank records showing exactly where her grandmother's money went. Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you're so smart, don't you? But you're forgetting one thing. Sarah doesn't want to believe you anymore. I've spent months poisoning her against you, convincing her that you're a manipulative liar who would say anything to avoid taking responsibility for your cheating. You could show her a video of me confessing everything, and she'd probably think you deep-faked it. Maybe, I said again, but I'm not going to Sarah first. I'm going to the FBI. Fraud across state lines is a federal crime, Jessica, and when they start investigating you and Brad, they're going to find all the other couples you've destroyed, all the other people you've robbed. Sarah might not believe me, but she'll believe federal agents when they arrest you. The mask slipped completely now, and Jessica's voice dropped to a hiss. You want to play hardball, David? Fine, but remember, I still have Sarah's complete trust. I can convince her to do anything, absolutely anything, and if you try to expose me, I'll make sure she believes you've become dangerous, unstable, maybe even violent. I'll have her so scared of you that she'll get a restraining order and never speak to you again. That's when I smiled for the first time in months. Go ahead, Jessica, try it, because there's something you don't know about me, something you never bothered to research while you were so busy studying my marriage. I leaned in close enough to see my reflection in her eyes. I used to work in digital forensics before I became an accountant, and I've spent the last month recovering every deleted file from Sarah's computer, including the ones where you coached her on what to say to the divorce lawyer and exactly how much money to ask for in the settlement. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I knew Jessica would move fast to protect herself, probably convincing Sarah that I was becoming unhinged and dangerous. But I had something she didn't know about: years of experience in digital forensics and a burning desire to save the woman I loved from the predators who were destroying her life. I started with Sarah's old laptop, the one she'd replaced 6 months ago and left in our closet. Using professional recovery software, I was able to restore thousands of deleted files, including chat logs that made my blood boil. Jessica hadn't just been passively listening to Sarah's concerns about our marriage, she'd been actively creating them. The earliest recovered file was from over a year ago, a message from Jessica that read, "You know, successful women like you often outgrow their first husbands. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Sarah. You've evolved, and maybe David just hasn't kept up." Then came months of subtle manipulation. When Sarah got passed over for a promotion, I bet David is secretly relieved. Some men feel threatened when their wives are more successful than they are. When we had a fight about starting a family, "Hon, if a man really wants children with you, he doesn't make excuses. Actions speak louder than words. Every doubt, every insecurity, every moment of weakness." Jessica had been there, not to comfort Sarah, but to twist the knife deeper. She'd been systematically destroying my wife's faith in our marriage for over a year before she delivered the final blow with those fake photos. But the most damning evidence was a series of voice messages Jessica had sent to someone named B, obviously Brad. In one message, she was laughing as she described the look on Sarah's face when she saw the hotel photos. In another, she coldly calculated how long they'd need to wait before Brad could propose, ensuring they'd have access to Sarah's inheritance before she had time to think clearly. The final voice message made me want to put my fist through the wall. The stupid bitch actually thanked me for saving her from her cheating husband. She has no idea we've been planning this for 8 months. By the time we're done, she'll be broke, alone, and grateful for whatever crumbs of affection we throw her way. I copied everything to multiple secure drives and called Tony immediately. I've got them, Tony. I've got everything we need to destroy them both. David, this is incredible work, but we need to be strategic about this. If you go to Sarah now with all this evidence, Jessica will convince her you fabricated it somehow. She's had months to poison Sarah against you. Then what do you suggest? We go to the FBI first. Let them build their case. Maybe even get Jessica to confess while wearing a wire. Then, when federal agents arrest her, Sarah will have to face the truth. But Jessica moved faster than we expected. 2 days later, I received a call from Sarah, the first time she'd spoken to me in over 2 months. Her voice was shaky, frightened. David, Jessica says you've been stalking her, following her around, making threats. She's scared for her safety, and honestly, so am I. I never thought you could become like this. Sarah, please. Just listen to me for 5 minutes. Jessica isn't who you think she is. Her real name is Jessica Chen. She's been married to Brad for 3 years, and they've stolen almost all of your inheritance money. Stop it. Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Jessica warned me you might try something like this, making up crazy conspiracy theories to deflect from what you did. David, you need help, professional help, and you need to stay away from both of us. Sarah, I can prove everything I'm telling you. I have voice recordings of Jessica laughing about manipulating you. I have bank records showing where your grandmother's money really went. I have the metadata from those hotel photos proving they were digitally manipulated. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was cold, in a way I'd never heard before. David, I'm going to say this once, and then I never want to speak to you again. Jessica has been nothing but supportive and loving through the worst period of my life. She helped me see what kind of man I was married to, and she introduced me to someone who actually treats me with respect and kindness. If you contact me again, if you go anywhere near Jessica, I'm calling the police. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone in disbelief. Jessica's psychological manipulation was so complete that Sarah couldn't even hear the truth when it was spelled out for her. But I wasn't giving up. If Sarah wouldn't listen to me, maybe she'd listen to federal agents. The next morning, I walked into the FBI field office downtown with a briefcase full of evidence. Agent Patricia Hayes, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, listened to my story with growing interest. When I played the recovered voice messages of Jessica bragging about the scam, Agent Hayes' expression darkened. Mr. Thompson, this is exactly the kind of case we've been building against organized romance fraud. These people aren't just breaking hearts, they're running sophisticated financial scams that ruin lives. Can you get us in direct contact with any of the other victims? Tony Rodriguez has been tracking their previous cases. There's a paper trail going back at least 5 years, maybe longer. Agent Hayes nodded grimly. We're going to need you to make contact with Jessica again, but this time wearing a wire. If she confesses to the fraud while being recorded by federal agents, it doesn't matter how much psychological control she has over your wife. Sarah will have to face reality. 3 days later, I was fitted with a recording device so small and sophisticated that I couldn't even feel it under my shirt. The plan was simple. Confront Jessica about the money, get her to admit to the scam on tape, then let the FBI take over. I found Jessica at the coffee shop where she and Sarah had their weekly girls' talk sessions. She was sitting alone at a corner table, scrolling through her phone with a satisfied smile that made my skin crawl. When she saw me approaching, that fake mask of concern slipped over her features like a costume. David, you shouldn't be here. Sarah told me about your phone call, about all those awful accusations you made. I think you really need to consider getting some help. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. Cut the act, Jessica. It's just you and me here. No one else to perform for. Her smile faltered slightly. I don't know what you mean. I mean the voice messages you sent to Brad, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate Sarah. I mean the $282,000 you've stolen from her inheritance account. I mean the fake photos you had made to destroy my marriage. Jessica's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw the real woman underneath the caring friend facade. You can't prove any of that, David. And even if you could, do you think Sarah would believe you over me? I'm the one who's been there for her while you've been falling apart. I'm the one who introduced her to a man who actually appreciates her. Your husband, you mean. Jessica laughed, and the sound was like ice cracking. My business partner. And yes, Sarah has no idea, and she never will. Because she loves me, David. She trusts me more than she ever trusted you. I could tell her you threatened to kill me, and she'd believe it without question. Is that what you're planning to do with the money? Disappear once you've taken everything she has? Oh, David. Jessica leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. We're not going anywhere. Sarah is going to marry Brad, and I'm going to be her maid of honor. She's going to give us power of attorney over her finances because Brad and I are the only people she trusts now. And then we're going to slowly, carefully, drain every penny she has while convincing her it's all for her own good. I felt sick, but I kept pushing. What about the other couples? The Hendersons? How many lives have you destroyed? Jessica's smile widened. Not nearly enough, David. People like you and Sarah, you're so trusting, so naive. You make it easy. The best part is watching the victim defend us even after they've lost everything. Sarah will probably thank us for helping her manage her money, right up until she's living in a studio apartment wondering where her life went wrong. Jessica's arrest was swift and brutal. Agent Hayes had her in handcuffs before she could even process what was happening. Jessica Chen, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud across state lines. The coffee shop fell silent as other customers watched the woman who'd seemed so normal just minutes before being read her rights. You don't understand, Jessica kept repeating as they led her away. I was helping Sarah. I was protecting her from him. He's dangerous. He's unstable. He threatened me. But her words fell on deaf ears. The FBI had been building cases against romance scammers like her for years, and they knew manipulation tactics when they heard them. Brad was arrested at Sarah's apartment 2 hours later. I wasn't there to see it, but Agent Hayes called me with the details. Mr. Thompson, your wife is in shock. When we explained who Brad really was and showed her the evidence, she collapsed. She's asking for you. My hands were shaking as I drove to Sarah's apartment, our old apartment that we'd shared for 3 years before buying the house. When I knocked on the door, it opened to reveal a woman I barely recognized. Sarah's face was blotchy from crying. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. David? Her voice was small, broken. Is it true? Is everything they told me true? I wanted to hold her, to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, but there was still too much hurt between us. Too many months of pain and separation. Yeah, Sarah, it's all true. She stepped aside to let me in, and I saw the apartment was a disaster. Papers were scattered everywhere. Bank statements, legal documents, printed emails. Sarah had been going through everything, trying to understand how completely she'd been deceived. I gave her access to my accounts, Sarah whispered, sinking onto the couch. Jessica said it was smart to have someone I trusted help me manage my finances during the divorce. She said I was too emotional to make good decisions about money. I sat down across from her, maintaining distance, but close enough to see the devastation in her eyes. Sarah, none of this was your fault. These people are professionals. They've been running this scam for years, but I believed her over you. Sarah's voice cracked. My own husband was telling me the truth, and I chose to believe a woman who was stealing from me, who was married to the man she convinced me to fall in love with. She looked up at me with eyes full of anguish. David, how do I come back from this? How do I live with what I've done to us? I don't know, I said honestly. Sarah, I spent months trying to prove my innocence to you. I begged you to listen, to give me a chance to show you the truth, but you'd already decided I was guilty. Sarah buried her face in her hands. Jessica had an explanation for everything. When you showed me your work records, she said cheaters always have alibis prepared. When you offered to take a polygraph test, she said those could be beaten by skilled liars. She had research, articles, statistics about how unfaithful spouses behave. I thought I was being smart, protecting myself from manipulation. And the whole time, she was the one manipulating you. The FBI agent showed me voice recordings, David. Jessica was laughing about how easy it was to fool me. She called me pathetic, said I was so desperate for someone to care about me that I'd believe anything. Sarah's shoulders shook with silent sobs. She said Brad only pretended to love me because that was his job in their sick game. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, the same feeling I'd had when I'd first heard those recordings. Sarah, Jessica is a sociopath. Nothing she said about you was true. She targeted you because you're kind, trusting, and loyal. Those aren't weaknesses, even though she used them against you. I don't feel kind or loyal, Sarah said bitterly. I feel stupid. I feel like the biggest fool who ever lived. And David, the worst part is, I actually started to love him. Brad, I mean. Even though it was all fake, even though he never cared about me for a single second, I was falling in love with a lie. We sat in silence for a long time. The apartment felt heavy with the weight of everything we'd lost, everything that had been destroyed by Jessica's manipulation. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Agent Hayes said they recovered most of my inheritance money. It was in accounts that Jessica and Brad had set up, waiting to be transferred offshore. She said if you hadn't exposed them when you did, it would have all been gone within a week. They were planning to disappear? No. Sarah's voice was flat, emotionless. They were planning to stay, to marry me off to Brad so they could have legal access to everything I owned. Agent Hayes said their pattern was to completely drain victims over several years, then move on to the next target while keeping the previous victims as ongoing sources of income. The scope of Jessica's cruelty was staggering. It wasn't enough to steal Sarah's money. She'd wanted to trap her in a fake marriage, isolate her from everyone who truly cared about her, and slowly destroy her life while convincing her it was all for her own good. Sarah, I need you to know something, I said carefully. I never stopped loving you, even when you wouldn't listen to to me. Even when you chose to believe the worst about me, I never stopped hoping that someday you'd see the truth. Sarah looked up at me with fresh tears in her eyes. But is that enough, David? After everything I put you through, after how easily I threw away 8 years of marriage, how can you ever trust me again? How can I ever trust myself? I don't know, I admitted. Sarah, what we had was good. It was real. But Jessica didn't just destroy your trust in me. She destroyed your ability to trust your own judgment, and I can't fix that for you. Only you can decide whether you're willing to do the work to rebuild what she tore down. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The divorce papers are still active, I finished. Sarah, I'm not going to pressure you to make any decisions right now. You've been through hell, and you need time to process what's happened. But I want you to know that if you decide you want to try to rebuild what we had, I'm willing to work for it. It won't be easy, and it won't be the same as before, but maybe we can build something stronger. As I got up to leave, Sarah called my name. When I turned back, she was holding something in her hand. Her wedding ring, the one she'd taken off the day she'd moved out. I kept it, she whispered. Even after everything, even when I hated you, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I looked at the ring, remembering the day I'd put it on her finger, full of hope and love and certainty about our future. Now it felt like a relic from another lifetime, when we were different people who believed in happily ever after. 6 months later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching Jessica Chen receive her sentence. 15 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Brad got 12 years. The judge had been particularly harsh after hearing testimony from 7 other victims whose lives had been destroyed by their schemes. The defendants showed a complete lack of remorse and a sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation, Judge Martinez said before delivering the sentence. They didn't just steal money. They systematically destroyed their victims' ability to trust others and themselves. Sarah sat beside me in the courtroom, her hand resting lightly on my arm. It had taken months of couples therapy, individual counseling, and countless difficult conversations, but we'd slowly started rebuilding what Jessica had tried to destroy. We weren't the same people who'd gotten married 8 years ago, but maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. I keep thinking about all the red flags I missed, Sarah had said during one of our therapy sessions. Jessica always had reasons why I shouldn't talk to you about our problems. She said you'd just manipulate me or make me feel guilty for having valid concerns. Our therapist, Dr. Rachel Kim, had explained how predators like Jessica operated. They isolate victims from their support systems by positioning themselves as the only trustworthy source of advice. Every healthy relationship the victim has becomes a threat to the predator's control. The hardest part hadn't been forgiving Sarah for not believing me. It had been helping her forgive herself for being victimized. She'd blamed herself for months, convinced that she should have seen through Jessica's manipulation. Smart people get scammed every day, I'd told her after another night of watching her struggle with guilt and shame. Jessica had been studying you for over a year, learning your insecurities, your triggers, your fears. She knew exactly which buttons to push. As we left the courthouse after Jessica's sentencing, Sarah was quiet. We'd decided to drive separately because she wanted time to process the end of this chapter of our lives. When we got home, to the house we'd started living in together again just 2 months earlier, Sarah sat down at our kitchen table with a cup of tea and stared out the window. I testified against her today, Sarah said finally. Told the court exactly how she manipulated me, how she used my love for her against me. And you know what the hardest part was? I sat down across from her, the same way I had that day in her apartment when everything came crashing down. What? Part of me still misses her. Not the real Jessica, but the woman I thought she was. The friend who listened to my problems and brought me ice cream when I was sad. Even though I know it was all fake, even though I know she was documenting my pain for entertainment, some part of me still grieves the friendship I thought we had. That makes sense, I said. You loved someone who never existed. That's a real loss, even if the person wasn't real. Sarah nodded, wiping away a tear. Dr. Kim says that's normal, but it feels twisted. How do you mourn someone who was actively trying to destroy your life? We'd been having conversations like this for months now, slowly untangling the psychological damage Jessica had done. Sarah had been in individual therapy twice a week, working through the trauma of being so thoroughly deceived by someone she'd trusted completely. The FBI found evidence that they'd done this to at least 12 couples over 5 years, I said. You weren't the first, and if we hadn't stopped them, you wouldn't have been the last. I know. Agent Hayes said our case was unusual because most victims never reconcile. Usually the relationship damage is too severe to repair. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. David, I need you to know how grateful I am that you fought for the truth even when I couldn't hear it, and I need you to know that I don't blame you for what happened. Jessica was good at what she did. If she'd targeted me instead of you, she might have succeeded in turning me against you too. We'd canceled our original divorce proceedings, but we hadn't rushed back into our old patterns either. We were dating again, essentially, going to dinner, having long conversations, slowly rebuilding intimacy and trust. Some nights, Sarah stayed in the guest room because she needed space to process her feelings. Other nights, she slept next to me, and we'd hold each other like we were afraid the other might disappear. There's something I want to tell you, Sarah said, squeezing my hand. I've been thinking about Jessica's last letter from prison. A month ago, Jessica had written Sarah a letter that was supposedly an apology, but was really another another attempt at manipulation. She'd tried to convince Sarah that their friendship had been real, that she'd only gotten involved with the scam to protect Sarah from my alleged cheating. Even from prison, she was still trying to rewrite history. What about it? Reading that letter made me realize something important. For months, I've been afraid that I'd fall for another manipulator, that I'd proven I couldn't trust my own judgment. But when I read Jessica's lies, I could see right through them. Every technique she'd used before was transparent to me now. You're stronger than you were before this happened. We both are, Sarah said. David, what Jessica did to us was horrible, but in some ways, it forced us to examine things about our marriage that we'd been ignoring. We're communicating better now than we did in our first 8 years together. She was right. Our therapy sessions had revealed patterns we'd fallen into. Times when I'd shut down instead of sharing my feelings. Moments when Sarah had sought validation from others instead of talking to me about her insecurities. Jessica had exploited those weaknesses, but now that we knew about them, we could work on them together. So what happens now? I asked. Sarah smiled for the first time since we'd left the courthouse. Now we keep doing the work. We keep talking, keep going to therapy, keep choosing each other every day, and maybe in a year or two, when we're both ready, we can talk about having a real wedding ceremony. What do you mean? I mean our first wedding was about the fantasy of happily ever after. If we do this again, it'll be about choosing love even when it's difficult, even when other people try to tear us apart. Sarah pulled her wedding ring out of her pocket, the same ring she'd kept throughout our separation. David Thompson, would you marry me again someday? Not the naive woman who trusted everyone, and not the perfect husband who never made mistakes, but the real us? I looked at the woman sitting across from me, scarred but stronger, wiser but still capable of incredible love, and felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year. Hope. Yes, I said, taking the ring and slipping it back onto her finger where it belonged. Sarah Thompson, I would marry you again in a heartbeat. 2 years later, Jessica Chen was featured in a documentary about romance scams, still maintaining her innocence and claiming she'd been trying to protect her victims. We didn't watch it. We were too busy living the life she'd tried to destroy, proving that sometimes love really can survive anything. Even the calculated cruelty of someone who thought our trust made us weak. We learned that our trust wasn't a weakness at all. It was the foundation of everything real and beautiful in our lives, and no one, not Jessica, not anyone, could take that away from us again. What do you think about this story? Have you ever experienced someone trying to manipulate your relationships or turn you against people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support, and thank you all for watching until the end.